Lilo and Stitch is a comedy movie where we follow Lilo. She's a little girl living in Hawaii under the guardianship of her older sister Nani. While trying to create the image that Nani is a suitable guardian for Lilo, their hometown is visited by an enhanced extraterrestrial creature named Stitch, who is on the run from a space empire that is trying to recover him. Lilo and Nani adopt Stitch thinking he's just an ordinary house pet, but he ends up leaving a trail of destruction and mayhem everywhere he goes, complicating Nani's attempts at creating the illusion that their family is stable. So this is the latest Disney live-action remake, but it's not a complete stinker. I'll talk more about how well it adapts the original movie in a sec. Following the same plot, it's a story about alienation. It's about a young girl who feels alone and misunderstood. The people in her life see her as an abnormal creature. Similarly, Stitch is cast out by a hierarchy that sees him as a demented monster with no place in the universe. These two find solace in each other, relishing in their mutual affinity for chaos, and they become a family. A dysfunctional one thanks to Stitch. Stitch being the bane of Nani's existence and pulling ridiculous gags is the thing that carries this movie. That and Stitch being so adorable are the two things that have made the IP so lovable. Not only does he just look like an adorable little animal, but he also brings a lot of heart to the story. Sure, he's a destructive little monster, but there are parts of the movie where he shows genuine compassion for Lilo, which make for some of the movie's most touching scenes. His friendship with Lilo is the heart and soul of this movie. Sure, her relationship with Nani is also there, but the chemistry that Lilo has with Stitch is just so much greater. So perhaps it is a bit obvious for me to say that Lilo and Stitch together were the best part of the movie entitled Lilo and Stitch, but I just want to make that loud and clear. Otherwise, the direction of the movie feels pretty stilted. This movie was originally supposed to go straight to streaming rather than theaters, and the effort that went into it kind of reflects that. Starting with the pacing. Within the first 5 minutes, you might find the tempo to be pretty jarring because it really flies through the first scene too quickly. For purposes of comedic timing, that makes perfect sense, but even when it wasn't in the service of jokes landing, the pacing just felt a bit rushed. Some of the performances also felt a bit subpar. The only ones that I thought were fine were Sydney Agudong and Zach Galifianakis playing Nani and Jumba. Whether or not it's an issue of not understanding the assignment or actors simply being miscast is open to debate, but pretty much everyone else felt a little bit lacking. In human form, Pleakley, played by Billy Magnuson, felt a bit too hammy. I get that Pleakley is a very upbeat and enthusiastic character, but this performance feels a little bit too smiley and childlike. Kaipo Dudois, who plays David, did not take up the same space as the animated David. I'm not necessarily referring to his build, but his overall physicality and presence in the movie felt very small. As for Lilo, I mean, child actors can be really hit or miss, and she's very young, so I don't want to give her too hard of a time, but there were times where she was not very expressive in her performance. And most of the minor characters and featured extras were kind of mid. Like, even the iconic dude who drops his ice cream cone just looked like he was tossing his ice cream on the ground on cue rather than actually dropping it in shock or disbelief. There were also a couple points where the ADR was pretty noticeable. Like, at one point, Cobra Bubbles had dialogue added when his lips weren't even moving at all. Like, literally what you're seeing on screen right now, that's basically what it was like. So again, this is a remake of the 2002 animated movie, which I loved when I was a kid. I loved the other movies too, and I would always watch the Disney Channel show whenever it was on TV. So yeah, I was a big Lilo and Stitch fan from the time the first movie came out in theaters to when the Disney Channel show got canceled, to my dismay. So this was the first live-action Disney remake that I was actually really looking forward to. I rewatched the original movie so it would be fresh in my brain while watching this one, and so that I could spot the differences, and it pretty closely follows the plot of the original movie, especially in the first act. It even reuses a lot of the same jokes, not even just the bigger gags like the ice cream guy, for example. There are plenty of small jokes from the original that weren't meant to make for big or ridiculous moments that were brought back in this version. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. For a lot of fans, I'm sure this will feel like they're just trying to do the original movie justice, and there are still plenty of new gags that will prevent the movie from feeling like just a rehash. There are a few recognizable scenes that weren't in the original, especially with Jumba and Pleakley. Some of those are silly, not really laugh out loud funny, but silly. So the most notable change made for this version is probably its biggest letdown, and that is how the antics are much less wacky and animated here. In the original movie, we would see Stitch doing things like building San Francisco in Lilo's bedroom and picking up a blue punch buggy and punching someone with it. In pursuit of making this live-action version more feasible, it's been mostly stripped of cartoonish energy, which is really unfortunate because that's one of the things that made the original movie so charming. There is still some of that, but the adults don't ever witness it. For example, the movie still includes one of my favorite bits from the original, but Nani is actually now staring at her phone and not paying attention to it. So it's just LILO witnessing this cartoonish phenomenon, with the joke obviously being that she is a child and has no credibility. That way we don't have to suspend our disbelief in rational-minded adults being impartial to these miraculous occurrences. This is to play into the story's live-action form being more plausible. It's for that same reason that Jumba and Pleakley use alien technology to actually present themselves as human, rather than being thinly veiled by wigs and human clothing for comedic value. This is also a sad change to see because this was a recurring bit throughout the Disney Channel show too. I get why the modern Disney would want to make this change, but it is possible for them to include that bit and still frame it in a progressive way if that was their primary concern. Not including that and Stitch's most wild antics kind of just make the movie feel a bit diluted. The parallels of alienation are less recognizable here. They cut some of the things that drove that point home in the original movie. More specifically, they cut one of the bits that perfectly described Stitch's character arc. That's not a huge step down though, because even the original movie was kind of more subtle about that, while focusing more on family loyalty than it was Lilo and Stitch's mutual struggles. Nani and Lilo's love is still there. It does feel less heartfelt though, because Nani feels less motherly and more irritable, where in the original movie, she actually felt like Lilo's mother figure. Here, she really does just feel like her sister. Part of that is because the actress, while aptly portraying Nani's age, doesn't seem like a mother the way the animated Nani felt. But also, without entering spoiler territory, I will say that some of the things that she did for Lilo in the original movie were changed to where it's actually other people doing those things for her. So it just kind of makes Nani feel less loving overall. And then there's the absence of Captain Gantu. He is not in this movie at all, which I'm sure will lead you to wonder who attempts to extract Stitch in the third act. All I'm going to say about this change is that you diehard Lilo and Stitch fans are going to hate this change. So there are plenty of changes for the worse, but does this remake have any good changes? While the antics might be watered down, there are still plenty of new jokes, a lot of which are kind of cute. And to give credit where credit is due, there is one change that I would actually call an improvement of the original. Again, I just rewatched the original movie, which I had not seen since I was a kid, and it was a really lovely time. That said, the third act of the movie is definitely the weakest part. More specifically, the very end is pretty weak. It's easier to overlook lazy writing when you're a kid because you don't have any standards for TV or movies, but revisiting this movie as an adult, yeah, the ending is very contrived. They settle for some pretty lazy writing in order to justify giving these characters a perfect happily ever after ending. The conflicts are not resolved so much as the characters causing them are just like, you're fine, just get on out of here, you little rascals. So the one thing that I will say about this movie, at the expense of getting my dislike button mashed by diehard fans of the original movie, is that, yeah, the ending in this new version is actually a little bit better. It takes a slightly different turn from the original, and they borderline assassinated one of our beloved characters, but the plot details make a lot more sense, giving us a more feasible ending overall. The events leading up to that were nothing shy of absolutely heartrending. They are different from the original, but they are beautiful. Like, I got pretty teary-eyed, and literally all three of my friends who I saw this movie with cried. So as a remake, this movie feels pretty watered down for the most part. It's less extravagant and feels a bit subpar in some areas, but it has its fun moments, and they really brought it back in the end by giving it the heart that the story needed. All things considered, I would call this movie fine. For the most loyal fans, I'm sure they will be disappointed in the bigger changes, but for the average viewer, I think that it'll be entertaining at the very least. Thanks for watching this review. If it brought you any value at all, please give it a like. It really does help the channel grow. I'll see you later this week with my review of Bring Her Back.